Hey there, I'm Megan, a freelance paranormal researcher and investigator of over 25 years, and welcome to Paranormal Potpourri, the show where we mix the ordinary with the extraordinary to uncover the strange, the mysterious, and the downright weird. The scent profile for today is sweet pea and freshly turned soil, so take a deep breath and let's get into it. I feel like this is an appropriate time to fully expose myself to you, dear listener, and the world at large. Don't take the restraining order out quite yet. Please hear me out. They started production on season 3 of Interview with the Vampire, and pictures from the set have been released on social media, and your girl is not taking the weight very well. I mean, come on, Rockstar Lestat. I mean, that's literally all I've ever dreamed of. Seeing Sam Reed with velvet pants literally painted onto him with smoky eyeliner. 2026 is like a decade away. And don't ask me the color of anything. I'm appreciating my emotional support vampire. And our Australian Princess Diana is living his best fanboy life, and I am here for every step of the journey. As I was working on this episode, they released new pictures for their Comic-Con appearance, and I have to quote my favorite fan Instagram account's comment, "This is my longest awooga to date." And breaking news, Comic-Con appearance had already occurred, and my parasocial relationship with Sam Reed and Jacob Anderson continues to grow exponentially more, volatile and rabid. Mine eyes hath seen the glory of crash out Rockstar Lestat, and mine appetite has thusly been whetted. And if you think this episode in particular, that's about vampires and werewolves, is going to go easy on the Twilight series, you are absolutely in the wrong on that front. I am a proud tit-soak shit poster, and ye shall not leave here unscathed. I have years of pent-up, repressed feelings, and now have a platform in which to unleash my trauma onto the world. And if you thought church youth group trauma was bad, you don't know anything. I hope it's absolutely no surprise that I was a die-hard Twilight fanatic in my youth. I made some of my best friends in college by delicately ripping out a headshot of Taylor Lautner from a People magazine and giving it as some sort of weird peace offering because I overheard them walking past their dorm room. They were talking about New Moon coming out. I did take the poster I had of Robert Pattinson out of its misery by performing a modified Viking funeral on it. I'm pretty sure I tossed it into the fire pit a few years ago to end his suffering. Somewhere in the world, I hope Rob Pat felt the release from my curse and let a solitary tear roll down his face while he was filming The Batman or the weird film with Willem Dafoe in The Lighthouse. Something about looking at many lobster. I don't know. I haven't seen it. Also, if you're listening, hi, Katie, my partner in crime, looking at the 12 megapixel screenshots of cell phone videos from the set of the first Twilight movie on sites like Pinterest and the shitty MySpace fan profiles, buying every piece of merchandise available at Hot Topic and going as far as creating custom Jasper and Rosalie shirts for the midnight premiere of Eclipse. I'm so glad that we didn't have access or written permission for tattoos at 17 because we'd both probably be looking at about how much it would cost to get the Cullen family crest lasered off at this point in our lives. And I'm pretty sure removing full neck to ass crack back tattoos have to be in the tens of thousands of dollars, right? And unfortunately, for anyone who knew me at that time, that's barely the tip of the glittery vampire iceberg. When I say I was in a state of psychosis surrounding this series, it was that bad. I lugged the Twilight series throughout most of Germany, Austria, Switzerland, and Liechtenstein while as an exchange student in high school. And did I read a single page of any of them? No. What are you not comprehending about emotional support paperback novels? And did I buy the first 3 books in German as souvenirs? Yes. Trying to explain that on the U.S. Customs paperwork was an exercise in and of itself. The day I finally got my grubby hands on a copy of Breaking Dawn at Barnes & Noble, staying up until the ungodly early morning hours to feast upon what I was hoping would be the greatest single piece of literature the world had ever seen, and getting to the chapter where Bella finds out she's pregnant, ended any and all fascination around this world Stephanie Meyer created. My heartfelt gratitude to that cold dose of reality that hit me square in that face that evening. You don't know how that changed my life. And don't come for me with the, but I didn't know Bella was pregnant spoilers. We've all seen the CGI Renesmee memes. Get off my lawn. There's something incredibly fascinating and a little dirty when you find out the weird thing other people secretly enjoy, like putting ketchup on their eggs or drinking milk because they like the flavor. And since this is technically a paranormal podcast on paper, eggs and milk are suitable substitutions for the very stated obvious vampires and werewolves. My foray into the world of paranormal fantasy came in the form of books. And since I have the time and the platform, I would like to petition for that to not be like the worst descriptor of a genre of writing I hold near and dear to my heart. My Kindle Unlimited is a bloodied battlefield of titles and synopses that are set in otherworldly locations, humans versus some unknown new being. And they all have this weird trend I've discovered of the author having to write out the dilemma that is the bathroom situation. Like, thank you for the intense world building. I was worried my female main character would have to shit in the woods like a heathen. Thank you for describing what the toilet does. We're going to dive headfirst into the untamed landscape that is our relationship with what I'm going to call creatures that are unlike us, but we sort of want to bang. Addendum that, okay, some of us want to bang, but most would be okay with just having as like a BFF or something, which is also subtitled, sorry to my family member that decided they'd listen to this episode as their first episode. So thank you for attending my TED Talk. It probably won't get any less weird or better than this. I'm structuring this one a little differently than I have in the past with how I present concepts. We're going to take it nice and easy and learn about the origins of the others we've been exposed to throughout our lives. I'll treat it like you're learning how to ride a bike with training wheels securely in place. And then I'm going to come in like the neighborhood bully, rip those training wheels off, and I'm going to make you pedal home with your hands off the handlebars, possibly crying in fear and total confusion. And give me your lunch money while you're at it, you nerd. When you picture a werewolf, I'd like to think that there's at least one of 3 images swirling around in your mind. Michael J. Fox surfing on top of a van in Teen Wolf. Warren Zevon wooing somewhere in London. Or Taylor Lautner With a weave, one could clock from the International Space Station, delivering the worst line to grace meme sites than I can has cheeseburger.
Bella! Where the hell have you been, Lilka?
God. As much as my world revolved around Taylor Lautner's fuck-ass weave in my later high school and college years, my lupine heart lies with the 2007 fantasy horror film called Blood and Chocolate. Hugh Dancy can do no wrong. I'm just putting that out there. And I will fight tooth and nail in his defense of being in a movie that I'm pretty sure me and like 3 other people watched when it came out. So this movie took inspiration from the 1997 teen paranormal romance of the same name by Annette Curtis Klaus. The coming-of-age teen novel was set in the suburbs of Maryland, is somehow transported in the film to, my notes say here, Bucharest. All right. Our main character is named Vivian, and she is 16 years old in the book and allegedly the same age in the film, and she's relocated to living with her aunt after her parents' gruesome murder. Oh, and she's a werewolf that chooses to stay in her human form instead of giving in to the urge to transform. A real rebel. Vivian meets and falls in love with Aiden, who she assumes at first is a werewolf in disguise, but he's actually just your run-of-the-mill human. There's a West Side Story-esque group of wolf teens named the Pack that are up to no good, always starting trouble in the neighborhood. The synopsis of the book reads like a moody live journal entry from 2003, but I devoured that novel in its entirety and then again in the film version. So looking this up, trying to get some background, my favorite line from the Wikipedia article on the film is under the music subcategory. The film's score was composed by Reinhold Heel and Johnny Klimek. The soundtrack consists of 15 songs, none of which are featured in the film. Good luck next time, boys. You'll get them then, I think. Okay, hold the fuck on. These are the men who scored Run, Lola, Run, for God's sakes. Oh my God. This is actually a tragedy. I offer no apologies or regrets to anyone I made watch this film because there could have been worse options, like a 97th rewatch of 2006's The Covenant with a young Taylor Kitsch, and that's right, Sebastian Stan. We goes way back before Bucky Barnes and editor's note, it was at this point in time while looking up Sebastian Stan's IMDb page to see how long he was on Gossip Girl, because I kind of forgot, and because Chase Crawford's also in The Covenant, and the guy who kind of looks like an older version of Taylor Lautner, I don't remember his name. He was in that one weird Neanderthal movie. But if you wanted to know, Sebastian Stan was on Gossip Girl from 2007 to 2012. That while looking this up, my work computer crashed and I had to restart it. So needless to say, this part of my life will never get old or boring. The origin story for werewolves is an interesting one, to say the least, or honestly the most, because I'm me and I'm the one who writes this all out and I have little to no control on my impulses. And let's just get this part out of the way. How one becomes a werewolf happened either after purposely or accidentally being cursed from a bite or a scratch from another alleged werewolf, and the transformations would occur on the night of a full moon. But if you are Stephanie Meyer, I guess it's puberty that triggers the change. I don't know. Mormons are so weird with their long underwear under all their clothes, wearing no caffeine, having lifestyle. Also, asking for a friend, and I mean no offense by this, Have any of y'all seen a fat Mormon before? If you do, please leave it in the comments. It's for science. You should know by now, we're not just starting in the 15th or 16th century with all of these origin stories. No, we got to go in the Wayback Machine to ancient Greece. And I'm just going to smack some of these flashing buttons around here and hope that we get sent back to the right timeline. There are a few references to men changing into wolves in Greek mythology, and would it shock any of you out there to know that one king of the gods was involved? In the 2nd century BC, King Laocoon of Arcadia was transformed into a wolf as a punishment for sacrificing a child on the altar of Zeus. And in another version, Zeus is visiting Laocoon, disguised as a commoner, and Laocoon wants to see if this commoner truly is who he claims to be. So Laocoon kills a hostage and serves the entrails to Zeus, as is tradition for determining an Olympian's identity. Zeus, thoroughly grossed out, turns Laocoon into a wolf and definitely decides not to make sweet, passionate love to him, as, he is wont to do in a lot of myths involving King Horndog himself. The legend remained of men transforming into wolves after snacking on the innards of a child sacrificed to Zeus. They would stay a wolf for 10 years, and if they could stave off temptation of chomping down more human flesh, they'd get 1 whole year of wolfy purgatory shaved off. Should temptation of the flesh become too overwhelming, that transformation would become permanent. Can you blame them for staying a wolf, though? I mean, have you seen the depictions of juicy Greco-Roman gladiator thighs on vases? Bark, bark, woof, woof, am I right? The more I look into stories about people transforming into obscenely large versions of man's best friend, the more I realize it sounds like a bunch of guys in the woods just being dudes. Poet Petronius describes a scenario in which his character Niceros goes to a party and watches one of his friends take lupine form, and it may be one of the greatest snippets of literary prose that I've been blessed to come across. When I look for my buddy, I see he'd stripped and piled his clothes by the roadside. He pees in a circle round his clothes, and then, just like that, turns into a wolf. After he turned into a wolf, he started howling and then ran off into the woods. Some of my childhood friends ended up going to UW-Madison for college, and I visited a few times, and this just sounds like what happens before, during, and after a Badger game, or like the entirety of Mifflin weekend. I mean, shit. I went to Stevens Point, and I can probably recall 1 or 2 times I saw something similar after walking out at graffitis and the hunching form of a few guys on the side of the building violently expelling their $13 UV vodka fish bowls looked vaguely Wolfman-esque. And since I'm from Green Bay, if any of you have ever tailgated at Lambeau, this is a fairly common sight. A lot of modern-day depictions of werewolf transformations are violent and sudden, clothes exploding into fabric shrapnel as if the idea of a shirt and pants is offensive to the new fursona. Fursona is it's not the right word for that scenario, and I refuse to even breach that subject in any and all future podcast episodes. Do not ask me. No. In the fictional stories I've read, movies and shows I've watched, they usually have a reference to the human side, stashing away an extra set of clothes somewhere so they don't have to walk around the next day in their full naked glory. In the Twilight series, my only frame of reference, I fucking guess, Jacob's pack brings out clothes, and I think they only have cut-off jean shorts. And before any of you get in the comments and start arguing with me, I know they run hot and it's easier to pull on a pair of Levi's than it is to pull on a full velour tracksuit with juicy bedazzled on their ass. I get it. If you want to keep a werewolf in its current state, play a game of monkey in the middle with their delicate underthings. This concept of withholding clothing has been around since the time of Pliny the Elder and has kept itself up and running throughout the centuries. Belief in werewolves and belief in witches paralleled one another, which I think is kind of a crazy coincidence. There was a definitive split in the werewolf mythology during the Middle Ages throughout Europe. The Germanic version of werewolves became synonymous with witchcraft, and it was a fairly common accusation during certain witch trials. And the Slavic werewolf was associated more with revenants or vampires. Lycanthropy was used as a plausible explanation for serial killers, like in the case of German farmer Peter Stumpf, who was executed in 1589, better known as the Werewolf of Bedburg. The lore behind Peter Stumpf is exactly what you'd expect from Germany in the late 1500s. Between 1564 and 1589, there were a series of cattle mutilations and mysterious monstrous killings that besieged the German town of Bedburg. A werewolf-like creature was seen terrorizing the local cattle, causing stampedes with its multiple recorded attacks, which led to multiple numerous injuries and a few deaths among the villagers. A hunting party was formed to flush this massive wolf out of the woods, and eventually they cornered a beast that was missing its front left paw. When this wolf somehow mysteriously disappeared and was never seen again, Peter Stumpf entered the scene with a newly missing left hand. Now, it's not known if Stumpf was his proper name or a nickname that was given, as his left hand had been cut off and the alleged werewolf had its left forepaw severed, which was the key piece of evidence levied against Stumpf in his trial. Could this have been the perfect crime? For 25 years, Stumpf claimed to be an insatiable bloodsucker who had an appetite for goats, lambs, sheep, as well as women and children. You know, those staples of the werewolf food pyramid. Strapped and stretched across the rack, Stumpf confessed to killing and eating 14 children and 2 pregnant women. October 31st, 1589 marks Stumpf's execution date, which is described as being one of the most brutal on record. And that's saying something coming from the Germans. If you know an ounce of German history or anything like that, you know they live for this sort of shit. So alongside his daughter Bela, who he had an incestuous relationship with, because let's just add to the overall yuck factor of this tale, and his mistress Catherine, Stumpf was put to a wheel where flesh was torn from his body, and in 10 places, they used red-hot pincers. His limbs were broken with the blunt side of an axe head before being fully beheaded, and his mutilated body cremated on a pyre. Bela and Catherine had been flayed and strangled by the time their corpses joined his on the fire. And to add the cherry to the Germanic flair of this execution, Peter Stumpf's severed head was placed on top of the torture wheel that was decorated with a painting of a large wolf figure. So, how does a normal person become all furry all of a sudden? Sure, they've either been cursed or bitten or scratched by another affected man by day, wolf by night genetic carrier. But how exactly can you tell? One European superstition says that if you cut the flesh of the accused while as a human, fur would fluff up and out from underneath. The appearance of a larger than normal wolf in the presence of other wolves is a kind of dead giveaway and a common thread among most cultures with werewolf folklore. Dropping your drawers and putting on a belt of wolfskin can trigger the flip, which seems more appealing than a bite or a scratch. You could also rub yourself down with a magical salve, you know, a wolfy spa day. The Swedes believed that drinking a cup of specially prepared beer and reciting a specific formulaic incantation would do the trick, while in Italy, France, and Germany, it was believed that one could turn into a werewolf if on a certain Wednesday or Friday, one slept outside on a summer night with the full moon shining directly onto their face. Susan, cancel all of my plans, clear my schedule. I have an experiment to conduct. There may be medical explanations for the physical changes that some who are more in touch with their wild side experience. Hypertrichosis, a hereditary condition that manifests itself with excessive hair growth all over the body, is a leading theory for the existence of werewolves in our collective psyche. The whole being bitten by a werewolf makes you one may have been an explanation for the symptoms of rabies, which is a transmittable disease from wild animals to humans. And this is honestly the first time I'm hearing about this. The raccoons I hang out with in my backyard and party with on occasion, they just foam at the mouth with excitement when they see me rolling up with the goods. And man, do those little guys hate water, which is cool for me because it's more time in the pool for moi. Historical accounts of werewolves could have been attributed to congenital porphyria, which is a disorder that affects the production of hemoglobin in red blood cells. Depending on what type of porphyria one has dictates the sort of symptoms that appear. Cutaneous porphyrias cause skin symptoms as a result of sunlight sensitivity, rapid onset hair growth in affected areas, reddish teeth and skin around the mouth, and in some cases, mild psychosis symptoms. So, back in the day when your phlegm and urine were weighed on a scale against like half a chicken and a random rock to determine your level of overall health, maybe seeing someone with extra body hair may have you pondering if those howls you heard the other night were coming from the direction of their house. Of all the paranormal afflictions out there, lycanthropy may actually have fairly effective cures if you're willing to pretend the afflicted is an overactive puppy. Ancient Greeks and Romans believed in the power of exhaustion to purge the puppy power out of the afflicted system. Medieval Europe discovered 3 methods of curing werewolves medicinally with the use of wolfsbane, surgically, or exorcism. And if you can believe this, many of those choices proved to be fatal. Crazy. In Sicily, an Arabic practice of striking the afflicted on the forehead or scalp with a knife was fairly commonplace. The lowland region of Schleswig-Holstein in Germany thought that addressing said werewolf 3 times by its Christian name would release the curse. Jeremy, stop. Enough. Jeremy, get your shit together. Jeremy. A personal favorite, one Danish belief of simply scolding a werewolf would do the trick. I've found that the most effective method is to loosely roll up a newspaper, especially if you're trying to potty train your lycanthrope. My personal favorite internet lore revolves around the alleged butterfly effect surrounding Stephenie Meyer and the Twilight series. My Chemical Romance, created and fronted by Gerard Way, was formed after he witnessed the events of 9/11 and the Twin Towers collapsing from a ferry on his way to his internship in the city. Stephenie Meyer had a dream on June 2nd, 2003 about a human girl falling in love with a vampire. MCR was one of the bands that influenced the character of Jacob Black in the Twilight series. The popularity and cult following of the series birthed another brain cell robbing franchise, 50 Shades of Grey, which is a piss-poor adaptation of Twilight fanfic written by E.L. James. Helen Keller, if she was real, could have pointed out the 0 differences between 50 Shades of Grey and Twilight. So, I can't believe I'm about to say this. So if it wasn't for 9/11, my life's trajectory would have slingshotted into a completely different direction. And I think I'd probably be ruling some sort of territory in the South Pacific or been like a doctor maybe. And we could have saved Jamie Dornan and Dakota Johnson, and we collectively have failed them as a society. Although I guess without 50 Shades, I wouldn't have my favorite Vine of all time to watch on repeat on a nearly daily basis. Or we wouldn't have these wonderfully written lines of prose from one E.L. James. Let me read you some. Don't you like the butt drawer? I sit up and reach for the orange juice, drinking it down too quickly. It's delicious. Ice cold. And it makes my mouth a much better place. He said such loving things today, but how long will he want to do this without wanting to beat the crap out of me? And I don't know how she didn't win an award for this one. His voice is warm and husky, like dark melted chocolate fudge caramel or something. And another thing. The film franchise of the Twilight Saga has permanently altered the perception of what Edward and Bella look like compared to what was described in the book. The film versions would bully the shit out of the book versions in a fucking heartbeat. Bella's, quote, utterly indecent first date night outfit from the book. Think about it. You know, in the movie, she had just been rescued from the guys and they were eating mushroom ravioli at the vegetarian restaurant. Yep, she looked good in the movie. The book, a floor-length khaki skirt and a button-up navy blue blouse. I'm going to need everybody out here listening to do a hand check and keep those bad boys at eye level or above. I refuse to use the explicit tag for anything other than swearing. My undead beloveds are categorized as mythical creatures that feed on the vital essence of the living. They have been recorded in cultures around the world and became popularized in the 18th century when a wave of mass hysteria swept through southwestern and eastern Europe. And we focus on the spread of plagues and diseases in history class when we could be talking about this sort of stuff. I'm going to need someone to start chanting reform education now, please. Most of the early stories surrounding vampires go to show the lack of knowledge or just simple ignorance of how a corpse naturally decays and how pre-industrialized societies rationalize what they may have witnessed as being seemingly abnormal. Belief systems around the vampire are fairly similar across the board. Most creation stories are closely linked with them being revenants of evil beings, those who die by suicide, or witches. Other creation myths thought that they could be made by a malevolent spirit that possessed a corpse or by a bite from a maker vampire. Slavic and Chinese traditions stated that any corpse that was jumped over by an animal, primarily a dog or a cat, was feared to enact a scene from the Night of the Living Dead. And just like with werewolves, vampires also have a Greek myth associated with them. Except no Zeus this time, which is honestly the sigh of relief from all the animals and humans involved. And as a reminder, there's no real validity of truth or even a drop of reality in myths. So interpret the following however you wish. This alleged tale comes from the scriptures of Delphi in a section entitled The Vampire Bible, which honestly sounds like an oxymoron. An Italian-born adventurer by the name of Ambrosio was fated to make an appearance at Delphi in Greece. Is it truly fate to visit the Oracle of Delphi, or is it kind of like a psychic canceling an event due to unforeseen circumstances? Upon receiving what he considered to be absolute gobbledygook from the Oracle, Ambrosio wandered around Delphi aimlessly until he ran into a beautiful maiden named Selene. Selene was actually the Titan goddess of the moon in disguise, and Ambrosio fell head over woven leather sandals for her. What Ambrosio didn't know, because how the fuck would he, was that the sun god Apollo also had the literal and figurative hots for Selene. Apollo found out Ambrosio was gunning for Selene and placed a curse on him so he would never be able to walk around in the daylight. Now, did this fact deter Ambrosio? Not one bit. He went to the underworld to hit up Hades for a deal. Since Selene was a goddess and technically immortal, Ambrosio realized his mortality would be a bit of an issue if he wanted to be with her until the end of time. So he proposed that Hades keeps his soul while his fleshy meat sack lived on. Hades, probably super perplexed as to why this keeps happening to him, the lovesick guys bartering their souls to keep their ladies happy, looking or not looking at you, Orpheus. He agrees on one condition. Ambrosio had to successfully steal Apollo's twin sister Artemis's silver bow and arrows, then he would grant immortality. Artemis, the goddess of the hunt, readily agreed to let Ambrosio join her and her group of hunters, and then got real PO'd when Ambrosio bungled up his thieving attempt, and she placed a curse on him as well. Touching the silver arrows and bow would create an allergic reaction on his skin. Ambrosio had the decency to feel bad about his actions, which is very unlike a lot of characters in Greek myths, and asked Artemis for her forgiveness. Because one bargain with one god wasn't enough for the Italian adventurer, Artemis is like, "I like you, strange man," and allows him a free pass, as long as he pledges his loyalty to her and her alone. Editor's note, I'd like to butt in real quick to remind everyone to read the fine print when making deals with gods and goddesses. It don't matter if they're smoking hot. That shit's got a lot of loopholes in its loopholes. Failing to see what the issue might be with unending loyalty, Ambrosio heartily accepts the deal. Well, unbeknownst to our lovesick little guy, pledging loyalty to Artemis meant forsaking all prior loves and agreeing to never fall in love or get married for as long as they live. Remember the whole immortality thing? Loopholes. Remember, this whole cockamamie scheme was to get some moon goddess booty, and Ambrosio is all like, "This is fine, I wanted this anyways." And Artemis, excited to have a new plaything, attempts to create Ambrosio into her greatest creation yet, the ultimate hunter 9000. His senses, strength, and speed match the abilities of the animals they hunted. She even gave him fangs and long claws to boot. Essentially, Artemis recreated this scene without even trying.
You're impossibly fast and strong. Your skin is pale white and ice cold. You never eat or drink anything. You don't go out in the sunlight. I know what you are.
Say it out loud.
Vampire.
She gifted him the power of healing to make him just that much better than the other hunters in her group. The only tricky part was that he still looked like a human, so she allowed him to shapeshift into the most fearsome, haunting creature to ever prowl the woods, a little bitty batty bat. After gaining Artemis's trust and a new set of chompers, she gifts him her bow and arrows, and Ambrosio brings them straight to Hades. Hades, being the chill dude that he is, upholds his end of the bargain and takes Ambrosio's soul, making him immortal. Ambrosio, ready to see his Titan lady love, even after swearing his full full allegiance to Artemis, discovers that Selene is now mortal and on the verge of death, all because Apollo decided to punish her for, I don't know, living? He cursed her for something. Back to Artemis, Ambrosio went, hauling a dying Selene with him, and Artemis, kinda unimpressed Ambrosio still managed to fall in love against her wishes, tells him that the only way to save Selene is to turn her into a vampire like him. So Selene becomes a vampire, and mere moments afterwards, Artemis rockets her to the moon to restore her divinity and dumps her immortal vampy ass there because someone just can't seem to follow the rules. Separated by the literal sky and stars, Ambrosio creates more and more vampires to be his and Selene's children. Because that's obviously the only answer to this. He uses his venomous saliva to turn others, and Selene watches over their growing brood, illuminating their paths with the moonlight. I guess you could probably call that a happy ending. I don't know. I personally enjoyed the part where he gets to be a bat. Bram Stoker famously crafted the iconic image of vampires in our minds with Dracula, inspired by a real-life figure from the 15th century, Romanian leader Vlad Tepes III, or Vlad the Impaler. In a quick and dirty summary worthy of Vampires for Dummies, Vlad Tepes ruled the kingdom of Wallachia in southern Transylvania from 1447 to 1476. So Vlad II, Vlad's father, was a renowned Christian knight and ruler, and for his efforts towards protecting Christian Europe from the advancing Islamic Turks, he was given the title of Order of the Dragon, and that title was called Dracul in Romanian. Adding A as a suffix in Romanian turns it into the son of, so Vlad the Impaler becomes the son of the dragon, or son of Dracula. Dracula rose to power at the ripe old age of 16 after his father was assassinated and his older brother Mercia was executed by enemies within their own kingdom. He became the terror for incoming forces, his prowess as a warrior legendary. His inhuman cruelty was his standout character, character flaw. His favored method of torture was impalement, which, to make this as PG a description as possible, have any of y'all made a beer can chicken before? Or like tried to shove a tension rod through a shower curtain to hang it up? You know, what goes in must come out. In 1461, facing what historians classify as absolutely certain annihilation by an advancing Turkish army, Dracula ordered thousands upon thousands of Turkish prisoners to be impaled, and the word that they used in the article is planted. They were planted along the road leading up to his kingdom, which was probably a sight to see. And a proper good decision was made by the Turkish army just to skedaddle. Thankfully for us, Dracula's bloodline was cut short, literally, at the hands of the Turks at the ripe old age of 45. I'm not quite sure what to think about the coincidences of not one, but two authors of vampire novels that changed the very landscape of literature and popular culture, both being inspired from a dream that they had. But to quote one Greg Newkirk, synchronicities, man. The one aspect about vampires that I can say wholeheartedly that I relate to the most is that their neurotic tendencies are their biggest downfall. Universal folklore states how one can dissuade a vampire from taking un petit coup is spilling poppy seeds, millet, or rice on the ground near the grave of a supposed vampire. Picking up the grains and counting each individual piece would occupy them all night, thanks to their arithmomania affliction, or compulsion to count, which now doesn't Sesame Street make a little bit more sense because, the count is an actual count and he likes to count. Apotropics, or items used to ward off revenants, which are reanimated corpses, are well-known iconography of vampire lore. Garlic, with its pungent aroma and medicinal benefits of potentially curing illnesses that would turn the indisposed into revenants, is a staple in one's anti-vampire kit. Consecrated grounds and objects like crucifixes are believed to keep the bloodsuckers at bay. Running water is another method of protection. Just as a general overall spooky note, water is cleansing and a constant source of energy, and it has been a protective element against supernatural entities, including ghosts and spirits and demons, for centuries. Mirrors are another tactic to take against, as the weirdly racist vampire people in True Blood referred to them as fangers. This is a good way of also identifying someone as having vampiric nature, as allegedly they would have no reflection in a mirror. So this is kind of like a two-part, two-scoop theory, as mirrors originally were made out of liquid silver, and with the lack of a soul tying them to the mortal world, it would manifest as either not having a shadow, which would be difficult to see because they're not supposed to be out in sunlight, or having a reflection in a silvered mirror. Polite as ever, some vampires can't enter a house without invitation from the owner, and some can come and go as they please. So I say that the invention of the Ring front doorbell camera is a true game changer, and ain't nobody waltzing into my humble abode without my knowledge. I also don't ever answer the door, so my whole abandoned haunted house chic goes hard year-round and not just during October. Here's the moment in which I eloquently combine both Children of the Night into one section entitled, "The doctor has taken a look at your results and we think it's best if you get some counseling." I blew the decade worth of dust off my psych minor for this part, and my sinuses will never be the same again. I'm calling up the big sluggers of the psychoanalysis world. That's right. We got Carl Jung and Sigmund Freud in the lineup. Testing. Is this mic on? What do you call a silky underthing you've been gifted by an Austrian psychotherapist? A Freudian slip. Give you a moment to stop laughing on that one. If you created a Venn diagram of psychological attributes between werewolves and vampires, they'd practically be overlapping one another, but I think you already knew that by now. Our furry friends represent our fear of losing control over our own bodies and the fear of looking ugly or beastly, especially through physical appearance or by our own actions. By giving into animalistic urges, we abandon our humanity for the entirety of the time of the transformation. Here's a little psych lesson for you. Sigmund Freud divided the human psyche into three parts: the id, the ego, and the superego. The id is our primitive lizard brain. It's motivated by the pleasure principle, and in turn, the pleasure principle is controlled by the ego's reality principle. We are literally just cavemen hooting and hollering over a tree that starts on fire after lightning struck it, finding out fire hot, feel good, but also oochie shit, me burnt. According to our friend Freud, werewolves have given the id the steering wheel and are just along for the ride through a series of primitive urges, and letting the intrusive thoughts win. The movie and subsequent MTV cult following of a show, Teen Wolf, sums up why some of us relate more to these creatures than others. Puberty's a bitch of a time to go through. I mean, werewolves force us to take an evolutionary step backwards. They are hairy, they are feral, they are hypersexual, and they are violent. Again, puberty affects us all differently, but the hairy and feral aspect has definitely sunk its deep, spindly roots in me. And some of us as teens developed hormonal acne and a penchant for a blood-curdling side eye. Some of us transform into a slobber-jawed, red-eyed, crazed beast once a month. And some of us turn into werewolves. That's just how nature works. Lycanthropes straddle the very thin line between civilization and pure animalistic wildness. And for most of the story surrounding them, the moral is that the wolf must be broken so that the man can continue to live on and prosper as normally as they should. Those who have been afflicted with this curse are generally depicted as working class monsters. They are often residing in the lower socioeconomic brackets. The wolf allows the man to explore what he was denied access to, taking what he wanted, when he wanted, with little to no repercussions. Aside from the whole, probably eating someone thing, but we're just giving into our urges. If I want to chomp the mailman, I should be allowed to without the police getting involved this time. A silver bullet, easily interpreted as civilization, brings the man back from the paws and maw of the wolf, either by providing a quick and easy cure or a swift death. But hey, at least all the surrounding villages are safe from any super hungry grandma eating wolves and lumberjacks that always carry huge axes with them. Put those colorful hoods on and make your way through the woods, little girl. You are no longer in danger. There is literally nothing out there to get you ever. The lesson here, you're allowed to live wild and free to a point, and then societal norms start to make their annoying way into the picture, sucking the fun out of everything with a cocktail straw. I know. I heard the gasp. You thought I was going to say sucking it out like a vampire or something, but I'm far too clever for that obvious trap. And oh, hey, cool. I just noticed there's cheese under this propped up box over in the corner. This is the part of the show where I admit, while reading through some of my research, I found myself being personally dragged for filth, because why is it so wrong and yet so right to love a vampire? Carl Jung was not on my bingo card as someone who would have delved deep into the realm of the undead, but hey, a free space is a free space. Jungian psychology focuses on the concept of a collective unconscious, which is a fancy way of saying everyone has sort of the same thoughts and ideas about everything and have had the same ideas for centuries because none of us have had a unique experience ever. Jung devised what he called archetypes, which are characterizations that seem to have a foothold in the collective human psyche, and using these, we can see how much of the myth of reality surrounding vampires have stood the test of time. The shadow archetype envelops part of our unconscious mind that has a tight hold on repressed desires and emotions, those undesirable elements of what makes us us. According to Jungian theory, vampires represent the exact elements that we repress on a daily basis, the ones society asks us to keep quiet and still. Just skimming off the top of my head, violence, lust, the constant urge for power and control, those urges. And just as werewolves toe the line between man and beast, vampires poke at our fears of living outside the conventions of a straight-laced society. They seem to freely embrace the darker side of themselves and, for the most part, have no shame. Immortality dives headfirst into Jung's wise old man archetype that represents wisdom, knowledge, and the transcendence of time. Vampires, in their multitude of depictions throughout the years and in various forms of media, are either the wise sages burdened with the knowledge of mistakes of time long past, or the tragic heroes of the age, doing everything that they can for the sake of others, but god damn, that one ding-dang fatal flaws of theirs comes out to play at the most inconvenient of times. These undead characters represent a figure of humanity who has seemingly experienced every nuance, every nook and cranny of human emotion, and is well versed in the mechanics of society, but remains untouchable and unreachable to the hooded specter of death. This is the part of vampires that I gravitate towards the most. This deep human desire to acquire knowledge, knowing time is no longer a factor that hangs in the balance. Hey, guess what? It's who gives a fuck o'clock. I'm reading every book and every journal article I can find, and I won't step on my glasses in the meantime. Immortality also ties into our fear of death, of the ending of things, the ending of what makes us who we are. With that fear in the rear view, immortality allows the luckiest of us to continue down this unending path towards enlightenment and the developing nature of us as an individual. I'd use my newfound immortality to not better myself in the long run. I'd probably use it to rewatch Game of Thrones from the beginning while simultaneously reading the series, because we know that'll take forever to wrap up. And I'm going to present a new argument called, is George R.R. Martin a member of the undead, or has he been dead this entire time and we've just never noticed? There's more than what meets the eye in the shadow archetype aisle, so let's take a quick wander down to peruse the other offerings, shall we? My new favorite phrase is agents of repressed desires, and that's what vampires are to us walking, talking blood bags. They are the models and instructors on how primal urges like bloodlust and sexual desire can be expressed. A lot of what we know of vampires and vampiric nature is expressed in fiction, so this gives the reader, audience, a perfect sense of escapism from the confining box of reality. And if you need any book recommendations, you can follow me on my Goodreads profile. A unique dynamic develops between vampires and humans that seems to escape the weirdness factor in modern society. The whole drinking blood thing. Blood represents an important metaphor for consumption control and intimacy. Vampires are weak without blood, and humans have the power to resist, for whatever that's worth, or to give in turn making the vampire strong and the human weak. An unhuman creature that feeds on the life force of a human gives anyone with a reasonable mindset the heebie-jeebies. This dynamic blurs the lines between a predator and a lover, awakening those unconscious fears we all possess when it comes to giving or sharing power in a relationship, romantic in nature or not. The prevalent theme in vampire lore is the element of seduction, how vampiric victims are lured out and become hypnotized or entranced by them, falling into their perfectly laid trap of danger and desire. For me, eye contact and boom, baby, you got me. Vampires skirt the edge of falling into the uncanny valley effect by maintaining some semblance of their humanity, be it keeping up with modern dress, or as the Cullen family would say, we matriculate a lot. Fucking goddamn. Thanks for making me haul out my mom's old-ass Webster dictionary from college to look up what that means, Stephanie. Graduating is just fine to use. We know Edward Smart. He drives a Volvo. We don't realize what vampires are until it's too late and everything looks like the end of a bad 70s slasher film, or we've got a set of pearly whites in our carotid artery turning us into a human Capri Sun. And I've always been a Pacific Cooler gal myself. Vampires can't always purely be good, and at the same time can't always be altogether evil either. They are complex creatures and characters, switching seamlessly between being the best and the worst at heart with their actions. The audience of vampire lore can live vicariously through vampiric choices, free from morally questionable conflicts and any real-life repercussions. I wish I knew about the whole real-life repercussion things back when Twilight merch was everywhere, because I now have a basement storage room full of broody hormonal vampire teens, and no one wants to take them. It's hoa, 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 half off, y'all. Supermassive black hole. Nah, supermassive Black Friday deals happening now. Please, please come and buy some of this shit. I fear that I've left Sigmund Freud out in the rain and we need to get him warmed up by the fire, fueled by vampire psychoanalysis before he nip-slips into unconsciousness. We're back with our id once again, watching our primitive brain push against the button that lights up and gives us a single Rice Krispie kernel for our efforts. Vampires allow our id to be personified in its purest form. The never-quenched thirst for blood, and the never-ending fight against uncontrollable urges by playing up our most basic of instincts, hunger, lust, and aggression. Freud would have a field day analyzing modern-day depictions of vampires in probably a whole fresh case of cigars to make heads or tails of what's being projected into the electrified jello molds in our skulls. Vampires, once again, have 1 foot on life and 1 foot on death and are considered by Freud to be suspended death. Their physical form remains the same as it was at the time of their change, like most corpses appear when viewed at wakes or at funerals, and they likely will never change through their prolonged walk with eternity. They are fully sustained by the flowing lifeblood from a human, yet face the ultimate consequence when unable to feed. To paraphrase a scene from my favorite show, Interview with a Vampire, and if you need proof, people listening to this, I'm about to show the front of my shirt. People who are watching this on YouTube, get ready, because, yep, that is the Brat Prince Lestat right there. Beautiful Sam Marie all over my shirt. Let me get back in order here. All right. After Louis is turned in the church, Lestat is disposing of the parish priest's bodies in a convenient local graveyard. Louis, scrambling behind his maker, now husband, is feeling the effects of becoming a fledgling vampire, one of which is the need for blood. He hunches under the cart with the covered bodies, attempting to lick at the slow dribble of blood flowing from the occupants. Lestat, quick to notice, grabs Louis' face to direct him away, telling him, "We live off the blood of the living. Lap up the blood of the deceased, and it'll suck you right down into death along with your victim." So not only do vampires toy with death on a grander scale, they also must fight the drive when attempting to sustain themselves to remain a living undead creature of the night. Speaking of the night, we can use the incredibly common depiction of vampires' inability to go into the sunlight as the id's rejection to function normally within society. Society is represented by daylight, which sleeps during the night, while vampires scamper about, and vampires famously sleep during the day. bucking the trend of the beating heart normies waking up to go to their boring 9-to-5s while Dracula is sawing logs in a coffin downtown. Werewolves and vampires share something in common. They are a culmination of our basest desires and fears, and represent a time and a culture that had deep anxiety around the unknown, like what certain diseases did to the body pre- and post-mortem, how death exactly worked, medical and psychological conditions that made humans act out of the realms of normality. One that keeps getting referenced in most of these research papers is cannibalism. I don't know how that fits. They stem from deep fears of what was and still is considered deviant behavior, sexually, culturally, and religiously. People stripping naked in the woods to howl at the moon for 8 hours seems strange in the 1700s. Nowadays, you could probably get a really good deal on an Airbnb down the road from the holistic business that's marketing the Release Your Inner Beast weekend workshop. Both are seen as the other, something that is pushed to the edge of society and often have to hide what they are, their true nature, to blend successfully in with society. And maybe that's why they're so relatable to a lot of us out there trying to live our most authentic versions of our lives as possible. The black sheeps, the weirdos, the extra pieces that don't quite fit right in the grander puzzle of society. What I think Roland Jones has done and continues to do with a new adaptation of Interview with the Vampire is borderline genius. He's taken the concept of other and chopped and screwed it into so many subcategories. Vampires, queerness, racial disparity, all set in time periods where what you think would be the most relevant, like in-your-face aspect of other that would play the main role, it's actually the quieter, more nuanced theme of other that seems to steal the spotlight. The world of Jones's Interview with the Vampire is set in 1910s New Orleans, which is a city still feeling the aftershocks of the Civil War and the antebellum period. We're just crouching into the Jim Crow era. And this is a city in time where there's a new way of things, with children and grandchildren of former slaves now free to an extent and are somewhat integrating into the greater white society. Louis de Pointe-de-Lac, originally depicted as a white man from the late 1790s New Orleans in Anne Rice's novels, is now a black man that is the head of his household, and he's keeping them afloat by investing in and managing properties of ill repute. Louis is a pimp, and he's proud of it. And Louis is also struggling with accepting his own queerness. Lestat de Liancourt, a French aristocrat who seemingly blew in on a stray Gulf breeze, is unabashedly himself in all aspects of life. His outdated clothing. He buried himself underground for 100 years, people. We can give the man a break. He's filthy rich and isn't afraid to showcase that. He is a purveyor of the softer sides of society, loving opera and going to symphonies, and he is also very confident in his sexuality, or as he would say, non-discriminating, before slamming the door shut to their private incinerator full of that night's dinner scraps. Jacob Anderson, the actor behind Louis, was interviewed. The irony knows no bounds. He was interviewed on NPR's It's Been a Minute back in October of 2022 to discuss our society's undying love for vampires. The changes from the 1994 film with Tom Cruise, Brad Pitt, Antonio Banderas, and Kirsten Dunst were brought up, and Anderson unintentionally makes a very brilliant point. Quote, "It's a fun watch, but it definitely feels very 1994 in terms of how it handles race and sexuality. But with the AMC series, everything is clear. Louis is a black gay man, and that is all central to his experience as a vampire. What should be the crucial takeaway, that Louis is a vampire, has taken the back seat to the bigger issues at hand, his race and sexuality. Being vampire is a back of mind secondary concern to the issues that society sees more as problematic and deviant in the early 1900s. Louis is still very much wrapped up in the world of humans, unable to detach himself in such a way that Lestat has managed, and to that point, that's beautifully brought to light through a lot of key scenes. Continuing on in the NPR interview, Jacob Anderson is asked to talk about how most vampire stories are really more about morality and how that theme plays heavily into Louis' overall nature. He goes, "There's definitely, I think, a sense that Louis is carrying too much human baggage. He's taken too much human morality with him. That's partially what kind of throws him into despair because it is such a difficult thing to moralize about. And I think that is also at the center of Louis' sort of moral question. It's like, well, what now? What do I want to be? What mark do I want to leave on the world? How do I use this power? I think there aren't any clean answers." The quote continues. I think there is an argument to be made for Lestat, and this is like the center of Lestat and Louis' sort of like warring ideologies. Like Lestat is like, well, if you're going to kill somebody, then make it beautiful, make it artistic, like make their final moments sort of sing so they're not dying in vain. They're dying at least with the feeling of like this purpose. You're putting purpose into their lives. And then Louis' sort of thing is, well, I just want to do it quickly and painlessly or not at all. Louis' kind of central question is like moral versus aesthetic. Do you do something moral because you believe in an inherent morality and inherent goodness? Or do you do it because society says that this is good and this is bad, and society is looking at your deeds as like a mark to get you into heaven or to get you into whatever it is, like whatever you believe in? Towards the end of the interview, Jacob is asked, what do you think it is that vampires either tell us about our desires or represent about our desires? And he goes, I think it's something about them being in the shadows and only being able to come out at night that ties into like intrusive thoughts, or like the things that we think or feel that we would never want anybody else to know what we think or feel. And the interviewer pops in and kind of goes, oh, like our shadow selves. Yeah, our shadow selves. Exactly. And they are also arguably the most human monster myth that's been created. They are more or less just immortal human beings. It's just that they can only survive by taking the life out of other human beings. I think that there's a human thing about desire that's like, well, what if my desire is harmful to someone else? Or like, what if my desire would make me a pariah to others? That feels like it ties into vampirism. I'm not sure. I haven't got like a fully formed thought about it. Just the simple bit of knowledge that an actor portraying a very well-known, very well-versed character knows exactly what point is being put across in a very subtle and also very over-the-top way shows how much love and passion that's put into this production. I, for one, hope that more discourse is brought up via this show and its showrunners because it is incredibly relevant to today's society. And they are truly embodying the vampiric spirit of continuing to push the boundaries of what makes humans into monsters and what could help bring a monster back to their humanity. I could wax poetic about this show, its writers, and its actors for hours, and I will continue to spread the good word of this show until the cows come home. Unless one of the cows eaten all up by a werewolf, then there might be some problems. And just a quick shout out plug to any potential interview with the vampire and the Vampire Lestat social media employees that may be listening to this. What's up? I'm available and I am willing to do your bidding. on my way to the Bristol Renaissance Fair the other weekend, one of the discussions in the car was, would you rather be a werewolf or a vampire? Now, I'm not saying the conversation leading up to this inevitable question had anything to do with this episode, but there was a pause after me finishing up my thought process of a particular podcast before the question was asked. In my infinite wisdom, I chose vampire because I like the idea of having time to do and experience things. My friend Misha, for a moment, and went, well, I can see you as both. And I had to agree. I love the hierarchy and organization within a wolf pack system, and I also enjoy the independent nature of a vampire. But I know me, and I tend to buck against the rule sets in front of me, and I could see me being like the rebel of the wolf pack, or like the literal lone wolf. And after a while, eternity stretches on for forever to a vampire, or like whatever Lestat says before the opera in season 1, episode 2, when he holds Louis's pinky finger in public. If given the choice right this second, do I know what I'd choose? The healthy pause I took to think should probably be answer enough. I'm pretty sure no one at my day job would look at me sideways if I started coming in covered head to toe and slathered in like SPF 5000 sunscreen, nor would they wonder why I look so exhausted the morning after a full moon. We work in healthcare. That's just a given. Do I think I will ever get over my obsession with those who live by moonlight? I don't think so. I've reached the age in which I've planted my flags in the things I enjoy and the things that consistently bring me joy and fascination. So far, the vamps and wolves haven't left my radar. The word that comes to mind is curated. I've curated my tastes and interests and have a healthy respect and newfound boundaries for them in my day-to-day because I know what sort of creature I become when I let those interests run amok. It's truly a modern Jekyll and Hyde struggle whenever I feel the grasp of fandom life wrapping its tempting fingers around my ankles, ready to haul me willingly, kicking and screaming into madness once again. If only my 17-year-old self could see me now. I don't think she'd be shocked by the trajectory we've taken, but she'd have some questions for sure. Thank you so much for sticking around with me on this episode. Sorry for the bit of a delay. Life and a sudden, unexpected bout of food poisoning will put a damper on the excitement levels of recording a podcast. No events coming down the pipeline, so just a few plugs here. You can check out my website, www.paranormalpotpourri.com. You can support the show on Ko-Fi, ko-fi.com, ko-fi.com/paranormalpotpourri, and on Buy Me a Coffee, which is buymeacoffee.com/paranormalpotpourri. Your support means the world. Monetary support, so being a subscriber means I can update equipment and maintain subscriptions and buy a bigger background so I don't look like I'm being squished into a box. And just being able to do fun things like travel and do live podcast episodes and all that good stuff. And while you're at it, could you, and I will quote Game Grumps for this, like, comment, and survive. Give this a like on YouTube. Thumbs up it. The Facebook, all that good stuff. Follow me on Facebook, Paranormal Potpourri Podcast. Leave me a comment. Tell me what you think. And subscribe. That really helps get the word out. I am just one person. I only have one mouth that I know of. And word of mouth travels faster if more people are talking about it. So until then, I'll smell you later. Bye-bye.